Here is a quick overview of what we will cover. We will cover macroeconomics of loanable funds versus BOMD, explaining the Roaring Twenties and the Great Depression. Minsky's financial instability hypothesis appears. My model of Minsky's FIH in the data. Minsky's FIH is the core model of capitalism. Application: a real-world walkthrough. Summary: how the lecture fits together. We will start with the foundations, build step by step, and end by tying the ideas together. Loanable funds theory suggests that savings are lent out to borrowers, but this view overlooks the role of credit in the economy. Put more directly, the loanable funds theory posits that the interest rate is determined by the supply and demand for funds available for lending. For example, if a bank lends $1 million to households, those households will spend that money on goods and services. What this example shows is that the money borrowed does not just cancel out. It contributes to overall economic activity by increasing demand. Understanding the role of credit in aggregate demand is crucial for analyzing economic growth and stability. Once that is clear, the next step is explaining the Roaring Twenties and the Great Depression, because it develops the next piece of the same argument. The Roaring Twenties was a time of economic boom, but it was fueled by rising credit, which ultimately contributed to the Great Depression. Put more directly, the Roaring Twenties refers to the decade of the 1920s in the United States, characterized by economic prosperity and cultural change. For example, during the 1920s, the U.S. economy grew rapidly, with consumer credit rising significantly, leading to increased spending. What this example shows is that while the economy appeared strong, it was heavily reliant on credit, which masked underlying vulnerabilities. Analyzing this period helps us understand the risks associated with excessive credit reliance and the potential for economic downturns. Once that is clear, the next step is Minsky's financial instability hypothesis appears. No explicit attempt was made here to model Minsky's FIH. Instead, it emerges as an outcome of a model derived from strictly true macroeconomic definitions. A cyclical economy with debt has a series of boom and bust cycles leading to a debt-induced collapse. For example, no explicit attempt was made here to model Minsky's FIH. What this example shows is how Minsky's financial instability hypothesis changes the behavior of the whole system once real feedback and interaction are present. This matters because the lecture is building a model of the economy that behaves like the real world, rather than a simplified textbook world. Once that is clear, the next step is my model of Minsky's FIH in the data, because it develops the next piece of the same argument. Rising private debt to GDP, period of falling, then rising volatility, the Great Moderation, falling workers' share, rising bankers' share, credit and economic activity positively correlated. Adding more definitions, prices and government spending. For example, rising private debt to GDP. What this example shows is how my model of Minsky's FIH in the data changes the behavior of the whole system once real feedback and interaction are present. This matters because the lecture is building a model of the economy that behaves like the real world rather than a simplified textbook world. Once that is clear, the next step is Minsky's FIH is the core model of capitalism, because it develops the next piece of the same argument. All the results in these models emerged from dynamizing strictly true macroeconomic definitions, using genuine simplifying assumptions to create very simple models. Imagine how different economics would be if we'd started from here, rather than all the ideological baggage of microeconomics. For example, that is why a model can look calm near equilibrium and still become unstable once it is pushed far enough away. What this example shows is that the same system can respond very differently depending on its starting position and the feedback forces acting on it. This matters because economics often assumes stable equilibrium when real systems can be unstable, path-dependent, and sensitive to shocks. Once that is clear, we can pull the whole lecture together and see the full logic in one connected chain. Consider a simple hypothetical market facing a shock. A basic textbook model would usually isolate one variable and ask how the system returns to equilibrium. This lecture takes a different approach. It asks what happens when several forces move together, feedback on one another, and change the behavior of firms, households, or institutions over time. That is why the concepts in this lesson matter as a group. The application slide is where the theory becomes usable. It shows how the lecture helps explain a system that evolves instead of sitting still. This lecture builds in 3 moves. First, macroeconomics of loanable funds versus BOMD, explaining the Roaring Twenties and the Great Depression, define the problem, and show why simple equilibrium thinking misses too much. Then Minsky's financial instability hypothesis appears, explains the mechanism that actually drives change in the system. Finally, my model of Minsky's FIH in the data, and Minsky's FIH is the core model of capitalism. Apply that logic to real competition and industry behavior. The full lesson is that once multiple variables interact, innovation matters, and firms respond dynamically. Economics has to explain process and feedback rather than assume the system settles down by itself.